Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ava if you have never been here before, and it's so lovely to meet you. Today we have a fun video. I have, I think, 8 books that I'm going to be talking about in today's video, and we're going to be talking about 8 of my 6-star reads. I have more than 8, obviously, but I wanted to talk about kind of like my favorite books that I've read semi-recently. I obviously have books that I read when I was a little bit younger that I have as 6-star reads as well that are just like nostalgic for me, but I just wanted to hit on the core of like my favorite books that I've ever read. The only one that I'm not including in this is The Cruel Prince. That's a trilogy, and that was like another one that I read a long time ago that it just feels nostalgic for me, and it's also just like such a good series. And I didn't hit on that one this time, but if you want me to make a specific like fantasy series or fantasy books that I like, I would love to make a video like that because I haven't read a lot of fantasy, but I'm very picky, but I'm pretty intense about the fantasy that I have read. So let's just go ahead and get right on into it. So the first book we're going to be talking about today is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I love this book. I'm going to get a tattoo for this book. It's one of my most favorite books that I've ever read. This is set in modern day Manhattan. It's an urban fantasy, and it is like a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet. It follows a couple characters' point of view, and it is really beautiful. It's beautifully written. If you've ever read Olivia Blake, you know how beautiful her writing is and how it can be. It's just mesmerizing is like the only way that I could even think about describing it. It feels so eloquent but so accessible at the same time. Like she's getting across what she wants to say in a beautiful way, and I'm not sitting there being like, what are you saying? And I don't have to reread it a million times to comprehend what's actually going on. So this book, like I said, is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It follows a family of like sisters and then a family of brothers and kind of their journey together as like stuff unfolds, because they're like basically like criminals. So they're like wizards or witches or something, and they are also into like, what is that called? Why am I forgetting the word? Not like the mob. Maybe the mob. Is that what I'm thinking of? So I'm going to read a quote from this book just to kind of set the scene on why you should read it. This is going to be out of context, but I have, hate and love were so very similar. Both were intestinal, visceral, both left scars, vestiges of pain. Hate could not be born from a place of indifference. Hate was only born from opposite sides of the same coin. Like, duh. Hello. Read it. Read it right now. It's beautiful. I've annotated it a little bit. I annotated it on my second read through, but didn't read all the way. I just like went back and highlighted parts that I could remember. I'm gonna read you another one. I think this is the only one I only have 2 quotes for. This is not even like, I just saw this. But just like the way her writing sounds for something so common is, what is it? This is like something else, but only when the sound of blood, that is a spoiler. Never mind. That's a spoiler that I was just about to read. So read it and you can find out what the spoiler is, and you can see how beautifully worded she makes her books. Next up we have, in the same vein as One for My Enemy, we have another Olivia Blake book. We have Alone with You in the Ether. Alone with You in the Ether I read after I read One for My Enemy, very shortly after, because I read One for My Enemy and I was like, wow, her writing is so good. Let me read another one. And they're both 6 stars. Alone with You in the Ether is completely different. It is not a fantasy book. It is just fiction. It's like a romance fiction kind of book. It follows two people. One is a girl named Reagan, and she's a counterfeit artist who has bipolar disorder. And the other one is Aldo, and he has like compulsive tendencies where he does like math equations in his head and like deals with like thoughts about time travel. And he's really, really, really smart, and he's a doctoral student who's like teaching, I guess, while he's getting his doctorate. And they meet in this little like art museum thing, and they just like fall in love. But it's a story of how they fall in love, what happens when these two people fall in love when they're the complete opposite ends of the spectrum of each other, like very, very, very different. And it's so beautiful. I wrote down that it's such a smart book, and it's such an emotional book, and these characters in the book feel so relatable, even though they're very unique. Like, you may relate to Reagan because she has bipolar disorder, but I feel like there's a myriad of other ways that you would relate to her as well. Just like some of the thoughts that she has, I related to her heavily. I also related to Aldo in some ways, and I don't have compulsory thoughts about time travel, so if that, you know, says anything. But yeah, it's a great book. I love how smart the characters in her book are. Like, if there's a smart character, they're like ridiculously smart, and they're so talented. And I love how she did that with Aldo. It was really beautiful to read. My quote for this one is, "Can you love my brain even when it is small, when it is malevolent, when it is violent? Can you love me even when it does not love me?" And I just thought that was really a very short quote, but it was like, that is the whole premise of this whole book, is kind of one character questioning the other character about, is your love for me unconditional, or does it have conditions? And it's kind of like answering those questions, and it's gut-wrenching at times, and I did cry a lot. I was in a stint where I was waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning every morning because I couldn't sleep very well, and I would read this book before I would go to work, and it would just like crush me right before I went to work, and then I would come home and I would go to sleep, and I would wake up and I would do the same thing over again. And that, I don't recommend reading it that way, but that was how I did it. Next, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. I love this book. I read this book so many times, so many years ago. I've tabbed it once, but obviously the end portion I didn't tab a lot, even though I definitely should. But this book follows, this is a very popular book, so I would be surprised if a lot of people haven't read it, but it follows Marianne and Connell, two of my favorite characters in the entire world, whom I relate to both very heavily. And it follows their tumultuous relationship that they share throughout high school and college and after college. It's gut-wrenching. Basically, that's what it is. It will rip your heart out, stomp on it, put it back in your chest, and then do it over 1,000,000 times. And that's kind of like why I like it so much. That tends to be a theme in the books that I read, if they're going to be romance books, that I like books that make me feel things very, very deeply. And that's one that this does. This is the only book that I've made multiple playlists for, and I will try to remember to like link my Spotify down below so you can check them out if you want to. The TV show is also really good. I really recommend it. But these characters, I could reach out and just like touch them. I feel like they're wandering around somewhere on this earth right now. They're real. And this book really ignited my spark for reading again. I went through like a pretty long reading slump for like a year where I wasn't reading a lot. And I picked this book up because I had seen it recommended everywhere, and because I liked the synopsis of it. I picked it up and it just consumed my life. I think I was freshly 18 when I read it, or yeah, freshly 18. I had started reading it when I got into a relationship for the first time, and I was like, oh my god, this is heart-wrenching. And I had my spouse also has watched the TV show with me and loves it, and we just get to share that love. But it's truly an incredible book that will teach you a lot about life and friendship and love, and all the awkwardness and uncomfortable things that happen when you love somebody but you don't want to love that person, or when you love that person but you can't be with that person, and all of the in-between and the ups and downs. And it's just so good. If I was gonna beat you over the head with any book, it would be this one for sure. My quote from this one is the infamous, "I'm not a religious person, but I do sometimes think God made you for me." That is the infamous, like, I've seen it on TikTok, like people freaking out about that quote, and it's a good one. It's a good one, I will say. There's a million more in the book that I have read that I love, but that is Normal People by Miss Sally Rooney. Next, moving on, we have a little bit different. We're kind of switching genres right now. We're gonna move into Rouge by Mona Awad. This book is something else. This book is something special to me. I love this book. And this book ignited in me something I didn't know was there, which was that I like weird kind of abstract literature. This is by Mona Awad, the author of Bunny, who has a sequel to Bunny, or a prequel, coming out later this year. And I read Bunny. I've read almost all of Mona Awad's work, but I like this one the most. This one is so fascinating. I read it so fast, and I just remember the whole time I was reading this, I was just like, what is going on? And not in a, I didn't know what was going on, like, what is going on? It was like a, what is going on kind of way. This is a horror / gothic fiction. I think it would read more as like a gothic fiction than on the side of horror. I wouldn't categorize it personally as horror, but when I looked it up on Goodreads, that's what it was categorized as, so there's that. But basically it follows a girl grieving the death of her mother. She flies back home to take care of like funeral arrangements and all that kind of stuff, and her mom, she finds out, was like involved in some like really sketchy stuff that she kind of falls down the hole of. And it kind of looks at like snapshots of her childhood growing up and just different pieces of that and how it fits into today. And it's like absurd. That's like the only word if I could put a word on it, that's what it would be. It's just absurd. I've never read anything like it. Very esoteric, very like one of a kind. I just feel like, I probably shouldn't do that because that's like a spoiler. Man, I love spoiling books apparently without even like meaning to. But yeah, my quote from this one, this book is not necessarily like an underlined book that has like a lot of quotes in it that'll hit you home. It's just like a weird book. So I just like was reading it. I haven't annotated. I don't think I even marked anything in it with pen. Honestly, I just like was reading it, just being like the whole time. But the only quote that I like got from it that I liked was, "Without the sun, what is the moon? Just a rock in the outer dark. Its illumination, just a trick. Just a trick from the sun's light, which it steals." And that's what beauty is as well. Or beauty is too. If you're wanting to read something a little spooky, a little weird, I would read it. I read it this time last year, I think, or the year before. I don't remember. I think it was last year. But I really like it. And I would read it again, but I would read it in more like the fall time because it's a bit spookier. So that's when I would read it. But next, we're gonna talk about my favorite book of all time, okay? I don't care. I literally will never pick up a book that I like more than this, I don't think. It's been over a year since I've read it, and I've read a bunch of books in between, and this is still my fave. We're gonna talk about a lesser known book called The Labyrinth of the Spirits by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This book is the fourth in a quartet of interconnected standalones. I read this book not knowing that it was the fourth book in a series of interconnected standalones, and was honestly quite confused. So with that said, I would read the books prior that came out prior. However, they are interconnected standalones, but there is a lot of information that you find out in the other books that would be more helpful to your reading of this book, but it's not necessary. So that's just a big thing out of the way. But basically, Labyrinth of the Spirits it follows two main storylines, Daniel and Alicia, and you need kind of the information more for Daniel's part than you do Alicia's, but Alicia is like a detective. I think it's Alicia. It might be Alicia, but I think it's Alicia. She's like kind of like a detective kind of thing, and basically it's set in Barcelona during the 50s and the 60s, and the Minister of Culture, I think is what it was. Yeah, Minister of Culture goes missing, and Alicia has to find him. Daniel has his own storyline going that's like, I don't want to say too much because I don't remember exactly what information is in this book versus the other books, and I don't want to spoil any of it because we all know I'm really good at doing that. But he has his own storyline, and their paths, like their storylines kind of intersect and cross at a point. Okay, we're going to try to speed run this because my camera just started flashing that it's about to die, and I only have 2 books left, so it's like, come on. What was I saying? Oh, it's not a super like quotable book, but it's imagery. There's people staring at me outside my window. It's imagery, just like takes you and puts you straight into the story, and it's Barcelona in the 50s and 60s, so it's beautiful. Everything's described well. The characters are funny. They're like real people. It's just, oh my gosh, I want to go back. I'm definitely going to read it again this year. This is a book that I will read every year for the rest of my life. But I have a quote for you that I would like to share. And that is, one does not become aware of the emptiness in which one has allowed time to go by until one truly lives. Sometimes life, not the days that have burned away, is just an instant, a day, a week, or a month. One knows one is alive because it hurts, because suddenly everything matters, and because that brief moment is over, the rest of one's existence becomes a memory to which one tries in vain to return while there is some breath left in one's body. For like a mystery novel, babe, that's a crazy line to put in there. Like talking about how you know life is real and when you're feeling it in the moment. It's crazy. Beautiful book. We have 2 more books left. 3 more books left, my bad. Next, we have Miss Magnolia Parks, my favorite series of all time. I love this book. If you've seen my TikTok, I haven't shut up about Julian Hates on it, which is the character that you'll meet if you read the series. But I only have the first book here, but it is a series of, I think, 5 books now. They are all interconnected. They are not all standalones. You need to read them in order. And they are beautiful representations of what love can look like realistically between people. Between people romantically, friendship-wise, everything. You can have, it's just so much happens in these books. I don't even know like where to start. There's 2 main plot lines. There's the Daisy Hates books, and then there's the Magnolia Parks books. My personal favorite are the Daisy Hates books. I'm using Magnolia as like this, like the picture, because I don't have the Daisy Hates books with the covers, the correct covers, because I like them all to be in the UK covers, but I haven't ordered the other ones yet because they were out of stock for the last time I tried to order them. But regardless, the Daisy Hates books are my favorite. Daisy Hates is my favorite girl from the series. Julian Hates is my favorite character. Big ol' fan. I read these books 2 or 3 years ago, and I have just like not stopped thinking about them since. My poor husband is like, please shut up with the amount that I talk about them all the time. Not really, he doesn't care. But these couples are high society London couples. They are super duper rich. That part, not relatable, but they are very, very, very rich. And the characters, out of all the books I've read, I know I've said these characters feel real, they feel tangible, XYZ. These characters are like have to be real. They just have to be. If they're not, then I don't know. I feel like I want to look them up on Instagram and follow all of them and just like stalk their Instagrams. Like I don't understand how the writer, Jessa Hastings, how she did this. Like how does your brain come up with a story this intricate, and then you write it, and then you make it feel like I'm not watching a movie, not reading a book. You make me feel like I'm reading an autobiography of someone's life that's actually living. It is very gut-wrenching. It is, I've cried a million times over reading these books, but they are so incredibly worth it. If you like romance, if you like fiction books, if you like a little bit of toxicity, especially in the first book, it gets better, but if you like a little bit of that kind of stuff, you're gonna love these books. At first I read Magnolia Parks for the drama, and then I stayed for the relationships and the friendships and the way that the characters made me feel, especially the Daisy Hates books. Like, those are my favorites. I can't wait for the next one to come out. I know Jessa has some other stuff she'd like to release, and I'm like, girl, release anything you want and I'll read it. I'm reading The Conditions of Will. It's like right there right now, and I need to remake this video after I finish it because it's going to be a 6-star read, I know. But these books are genuinely like revolutionary to my reading experience and my life, and I just cannot wait to have all of them in my possession. The quote I have for this one is pretty gut-wrenching, but also pretty popular. If you've read the book, you may know which one I'm talking about. But, can you die from a broken heart, do you know? And if I did, and they cut me wide open, would I bleed loving him? When they lift my heart out of my chest cavity to weigh it, does it weigh the same as his top lip? Is his name carved into my third rib to the left? Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, he's killing me. Loving him is killing me too. And I'm afraid, because how many loves really do you get in a lifetime? How many chances do you give it before you let it go? Oh my god, how many loves do I get in a lifetime? 5, and it's each one of the Magnolia Parks books. Thank you, I said it. Moving on, we'll move on to a different book. My second to last, Miss Ottessa Moshfegh, my other favorite author in the entire world, other than Jessa Hastings. If you couldn't tell, I love that woman. But we have Ottessa Moshfegh. I've read every single one of her books. This was the first one that I read, so this is why I'm representing this one. If I was including all of my 6-star reads, about 3 of her books would be in here and take up, you know, a third of the video. So I decided to narrow it down to this one because this is the most accessible one, I feel, other than Eileen. This one is the most popular as well, so I thought I would just discuss this one. Ottessa Moshfegh is a very interesting writer. She writes really satirical novels that are usually always a commentary on something, and they may not be at first glance. You may have to think about it. This one is a commentary, a satire commentary on rich white women basically experiencing life, and like they have bad things happen to them, and it's like what they get to do when they have bad things happen to you when you're rich and white and pretty. That's another thing she talks about all the time, about how she's so privileged and how it helps her so much in life. This book I read a couple years ago, and this girl, she goes through some traumatic things, and she decides, you know what, I have a lot of money, have all this time, I don't need to work. I'm going to, with the help of an eccentric psychiatrist, medicate myself to fall asleep for a year. And it's not like she takes the pills and then she sleeps for a full year. It's like she'll take the pills, she'll sleep for several hours, wake up, take more, sleep for a couple hours, that kind of thing. So you get the before, you get the in-betweens, you get some flashbacks of like what happened that she went through, and then you get the aftermath of how all of it changed her. And did she feel like she shed his skin and became a new person after a full year of sleeping? You never know. But this book didn't have a lot of great quotes in it either, kind of like my other ones. It's not like Magnolia Parks where it's written to be beautiful and heartbreaking. It's just written, and it's easy to read, and it's good, and it's funny, and none of the characters in any of her books are likable, which I love. I love when I don't get to like anybody and I get to look at the humanity and everyone, to be like, wow, you're a messed up person and you're a messed up person and none of you guys are okay. With that said, I will read a quote from the book because I did have one. And this one I just thought was kind of funny because it really sums up our main character in like one sentence. And it's, I did crave attention, but I refused to humiliate myself by asking for it. And I just feel like that's our main character basically in a nutshell. So that is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I'm back with my last book that we're going to talk about, and I don't have it with me physically, so I'm going to put a picture up of it on the screen over here, but it is My Dark Vanessa. And My Dark Vanessa I also read about 2 years ago maybe, and this book, definitely check trigger warnings on this book before you read it. With My Dark Vanessa, My Dark Vanessa is a fiction book, and it basically follows our main character who, when she was a teenager, had an affair with her high school English teacher who was much older than her. It's very heartbreaking, and it talks about how the effect of that affair that she had rippled into her life, because it's kind of like she's talking about it from a more bird's eye view as she's older and how it has affected her at different stages of her life. And she kind of struggles with where she falls on the scale of being a victim. Like, that's a big thing that she talks about in the book that I really appreciated, that a lot of people I feel like don't talk about, is like when you're a victim in a situation, sometimes you don't realize that you're the victim, or sometimes you don't feel like you're valid being a victim in a situation, and wrestling with that and how, like, is this wrong if sometimes I'm okay with it and sometimes I'm not okay with it, or if I'm trying to convince myself I'm okay with it, like, where is the line on that? And I thought that was a really incredible conversation to have in a book, and it was done very well, and it was done tastefully, and it was done in a way that doesn't glorify any of that, obviously, but it was just beautiful. I have a quote from that one as well that I'd like to share. I can't lose the thing that I've held on to for so long, you know? My face twists up from the pain of pushing it out. I just really need it to be a love story, you know? I really need it to be that. I know, she says, because if it isn't a love story, then what is it? I look to her glassy eyes, the face of wide open empathy. It's my life, I say. This has been my whole life. And I picked that quote because it's not a spoiler. You already know, like, what's going on. You already know. I've just told you she struggles with where she's at on the scale of being a victim. But it hits home for me in a way that, like, I didn't know another book could, because I've never read something that made me feel valid for wondering things like that myself. Like, if it wasn't this, then what was it? Like, that just means it's just my life and my experiences, and sometimes at the end of the day you don't want that to be what it is. This book really encompassed the feeling really well of what it means to go through something, even if it's not that's pretty traumatic. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments, or if you've read these books, or what your favorite 6-star books are. I would love to hear them so I can add them to my list and read them myself. I really appreciate you guys, again, tuning in, and like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help me out a lot, and thank you so much for watching. Love ya!